out of the 33 elders that were there, only 3 of us were called to the Zambia Lusaka Mission. And so the 3 of us traveled together, and it was really fun. We were very nervous and excited. We didn't know what was ahead of us. I mean, you spend 2 weeks in the MTC and you feel like you've been trained, but you really still have no idea what to expect at all. And when we landed, it had just finished raining, and the rain in Africa, at least in Zambia, is huge. I mean, the streets just instantly flood, and it was quite the experience, and it gets very, very hot. And so we landed and we got our luggage, and we were standing in line for the customs, and it was so hot. There was so many people, and it was just really, really hot. And but we were all still pretty positive and excited about everything. And it was really neat to walk out of the airport finally and meet up with our mission president and his wife and the APs. It was like a breath of fresh air. It was like coming home almost. And because your mission president and the wife are like your mom and dad. For however long you serve, you know, and they treat you like their children, and they love you like that, and you feel that instantly. And so it was pretty neat to get in the car and get to know them, and we went straight to the mission home. And it was just really neat to look around at the scenery. It was very green and flat, lots of grassy areas, and there was flowers in the trees, and they were big flowers, and I thought that was one of my favorite things. And I remember on the drive home, drive to the mission home, I saw a guy on a bike carrying a lot of coal, and that's how that's how the locals use their transportation. They stack up the back of their bikes with a huge amount of weight, and they pedal right alongside the cars, and it was quite exciting to see that. And after I had dinner and everything at the mission home, and we got things settled there, they took me to meet my my trainer, and it was quite neat to meet her for the first time. She was African and very strong. Like, she was a very strong individual. And I was actually placed in a threesome. The other companion was also being trained, but she was 6 weeks ahead of me. And so it was quite the feat for my trainer to be able to train both of us at the same time. And I really did learn a lot from her. The first day in the area was pretty neat. It was raining again, and I just remember climbing out of the car and just being, instantly soaked, you know, and you're brought to the compounds where, like, the high majority of the Africans live, and they live in poverty. And we were dropped off at this marketplace, and there was just so many people around, and so it was kind of interesting to suddenly be all around this dirt and these little homes that they live in, and just watching them interact with each other. And I remember that whole first week I had no idea where we were going. I would just follow my trainer and, like, sit down and try and participate in the lessons, and then we go to the next appointment, you know, and it was quite a good culture shock, you know, like, instantly you're thrown into it, and you get to see how people outside of the United States live, and how, as humble of circumstances that they live in, yet they are still so happy, and they believe in families, and they work together, and they're very hard workers, and they don't let the insignificant things bother them. They just have so much faith in Jesus Christ, and they have so much love for other people that it was a pretty neat thing to be a part of that. The people in Africa have huge hearts. In fact, Malawi is known as the warm heart of Africa, and I believe it's because of the people. And it definitely is a different culture, and they definitely come from a different background. The traditions of their fathers is probably the hardest thing for them to overcome as joining the church. They go back hundreds and hundreds of years in these traditions, and then suddenly you come with this story about a 14-year-old boy who saw an angel, and the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ has been restored. And for centuries they've been taught the ways of other Christian faiths, and they believe in Jesus Christ. They know that Heavenly Father is there. They just don't know where to find the truth. And sometimes the hardest thing for them to let go is just the traditions of their fathers, and fully accepting the restored gospel and the culture of the Latter-day Saints, because it is very different. I think that's the scariest part for any recent convert, is because suddenly they leave a world that they knew, with people that they loved, and they enter into a new world with a new language, with new customs that they have never heard of before. And sometimes they're scared to ask those questions of what they're doubting, or if they don't understand certain words that we use so regularly in the gospel. And so I learned very quickly that you needed to explain everything that you said. You needed to use as simple words as you possibly could, because English is not their first language to begin with. It's their second language, sometimes third or fourth. They did not grow up learning English, and then they have to suddenly worship in English, and but those that truly feel the Spirit and are truly converted, they never leave. They're very, very strong. And there was our district president, I believe is what his title was. He was like a stake president, but over the district. And he and his wife had been members for over 20 years. They'd been to the temple, and they'd faced a lot of opposition. And they joined the church at one of the most turbulent times in Zambia. And yet throughout those 20 plus years, they still stayed faithful. And as a result, they made a huge difference in the work of building up the kingdom of God. And the thing that I learned about them is they are so willing to serve. They just need to be guided on how to do it. It's brand new to them. It was brand new for us. But when we worked together and we focused on the members and everything, they really they have a desire to serve the Lord and show Him how much they love Him. As for the typical day of I asked a woman once what her typical day was, living in the compound, and she said she wakes up at 4 a.m. She carries water back for her family. They sweep the house, they do the laundry, then they make a meal, they send their kids off to school, they make another meal for their husband, and they just are constantly busy. They rarely have any time to just relax. And they're very, very strong. They can carry over 40 liters on their head. I tried 20 once. I only put it on. I couldn't do anything else. 10 liters I could handle, but my neck was not very strong. And they wash. It was fun to learn how to serve them, to figure out different ways to serve them. If we were walking by, you didn't do a lot of door-to-door contacting, like knocking on the doors. The doors were normally open anyway. So if we saw somebody outside and they were doing laundry, we would approach them and just ask them if we could help them do their laundry. And whether they said yes or no, we'd leave them with a brief message. And that was our way of contacting them. And my favorite part was if they would let us serve them. Especially if you're a North American and you have and you're Caucasian, they tend to be rather shocked that you would help them do something as simple as washing their clothes or ironing or washing their dishes. Their perception of white people is different, and I always enjoyed breaking down those barriers and using my differences to my advantage, I guess. When we would walk down the street, groups of kids would just follow us and say "Azungubo," and that's just saying white person hi, white man hi. And it was really fun to just see the joy in their eyes on just being able to follow us around and tease us a little bit, and that was fun. It was also kind of funny sometimes. I would turn a corner and there would be a new baby just learning to walk, or she wouldn't know how to talk yet, and she would see the white skin and be scared because she'd never seen it before, and sometimes I made children cry, and that was not as fun, but at the same time I was able to mend those situations. And some of the greatest converts that I had were because my companion noticed that a toddler was awed by me, and so she would go and talk to the parents, and they would let us in, and we'd be able to have a lesson with them, and they would want to come to church, and eventually the Spirit would touch them, and they would join the church. And I just thought that was really interesting, that I learned how to stand out and be okay with it. I was able to actually serve in Zambia and Malawi about equal amounts of times. When I was serving, there was four general areas that missionaries were called to. There was Lusaka, which is in Zambia, and there was the Copper Belt, which is also in Zambia, and then there was Lilongwe and Blantyre, which are in Malawi. And so I was the first sister missionary to be called to all four corners of the mission. So that was pretty fun for me. I served 7.5 months in Lusaka, and then I was transferred up to the Copper Belt in a city called Kitwe. The reason the Copper Belt is called Copper Belt is because they mine copper, and that's where all the jobs are in those four cities are the copper mines. And that was really fun. Kitwe had just recently been opened about maybe 6 weeks before I got there to sister missionaries. Up until that point, it had been all elders. And so the two sisters that were called there before me really made a huge difference. And the branch there just really welcomed us. And that was really fun. I felt like that first Sunday that I was in Kitwe that it was Zion in Zambia. You know, it just felt like Zion, like everybody was of one heart and one mind, and that was really neat for me. Cultural wise, both, there's 85 languages that are spoken in Zambia alone, and so lots of tribes. And there were definitely main tribes in Lusaka. There's Chewa. No, sorry, that's wrong. Anyway, depending on where you serve, that's where, like, there's a specific language that's more dominant, and so you're given the opportunity to learn a little bit more. Oh, Nyanja. Lusaka was not Nyanja, and in Copperbelt it was Bemba, and then in Malawi it was Chewa. So I only was able to serve in Kitwe for 3.5 months, and then I was transferred to Blantyre. And Blantyre was kind of the biggest shock to me because it was actually a mountain range. The city of Blantyre is built on a mountain, and so you're constantly going up and down, and when you're in the area you're hiking to and from appointment, which was pretty interesting for me. I was given a car actually pretty quickly on my mission. I think I walked for about 3 months, and then they gave me a car to transport me and the other sister missionaries around. And so that's what we would do. We would drive to the area, and then we'd be able to walk around. And in Blantyre, I was given a truck, and that was pretty fun to drive a big old truck around, and you needed it in Blantyre. I mean, you're climbing mountains basically, and so that was pretty fun. And I served there for about 4 months, and then I was transferred to Lilongwe, and Lilongwe was my last area. Lilongwe was actually set up a little bit differently. Because of some things that had been happening, for the safety of all the missionaries, they combined all the missionaries to live in one apartment complex. So there were 4 flats, and so the sisters stayed in one flat, this couple stayed in another flat, and then above us were the elders that were serving in Lilongwe, and that in and of itself had a lot of different challenges and different experiences, but it was also really good for us, you know. It was pretty fun to be so close to the elders and the sisters that you serve with. Cultural wise, the differences between the two, there's really not a huge difference. Depending on the tribe, they have different customs, but the biggest cultural shock that they face is Libola. It's like a marriage thing. It's when the husband has to pretty much buy his bride, and in Zambia, it is ridiculous the amount of money that is required. I mean, they live in poverty, and yet they have to spend so much money just in order to marry somebody, and so oftentimes they just don't. But in Malawi, they've kind of given up on that tradition, not in the sense that Libola is gone. I mean, they still honor Libola, but they'll just say, buy 2 chickens, you know, and give us 2 chickens. Whereas in Zambia, they have to buy all these groceries. Basically, they go, like, they do it in terms of cows, you know, kind of like Muhammad, whatever. And so, like, if you either have to bring the cow or you have to bring the amount of money that a cow would be. And so it's just, that was probably the biggest cultural difference between the two of them that I noticed. So the food in Africa is very different from here. The first African meal that I had, It was nsima with kapenta. And so depending on where you are in either Zambia or Malawi, it's either nsima or nshima. And so that was kind of interesting. The languages are very similar between the countries. So nsima is just maize meal. It's like our cornmeal, and they just kind of make it into this pliable mush. I don't know. They you mold it with your hands, and you eat it with your hands. And so you just take a little bit, and then they always have side dishes. They usually have like a vegetable for sure, and then either meat or beans as well, just depending on the meal, the time of the day, or what they were able to afford for that meal. And so the nsima was I thought it was really good, actually. There's not a whole lot of taste to it. Some people either love it or hate it. I loved it, and I thought it was really good, and it fills you up very fast. And so I had to work up my appetite for it, like my stomach at first could only handle just a little bit of it, but eventually by the end of my mission I could eat like a man. But anyway, the way they prepare their food, they usually use a lot of cooking oil, and they kind of steam fry their vegetables. Pretty much, we used to like to say that pretty much anything green the Malawians eat, which isn't completely true, but they eat a lot of green things. One of my favorite foods was pumpkin leaves, like our orange pumpkins. Just the leaves of that plant is actually edible, and it's quite tasty. So there's lots of different ways to prepare it. You can slice up tomatoes and onions and use that in the, and you kind of just put just a little bit of cooking oil and a little bit of water, and then you put all of your ingredients in, and it just kind of steams it and just makes it it's kind of like a soupy vegetable, and it was so good, so good. It's a good thing I went on a mission, because before my mission I didn't like vegetables, especially squash, but they eat a lot of squash, and so that was pretty fun to taste all the different kinds of things. And they tend to keep their flavors very natural. If they use flavoring, it's salt and maybe some packaged soup. That was always interesting to me when we would go to the grocery store and my companions would buy these packages of soup, and that's what they use as seasoning. It thickens your broth up, and it gives you flavor. So that was pretty neat to see. Chicken was expensive there. It was kind of a luxury for them to eat meat. So I thought that was cool. And they like to eat every part of an animal. And I had fun trying out different things. They also eat caterpillars, like popcorn. So that was pretty fun to try the caterpillars. They were called mopani worms. And they would just sell them in the market, and then you'd take them home and you'd bake them. And they did not smell very nice, but they tasted fine. And they eat ants in Malawi. They eat field mice. I never tried that, though. I don't know how that tastes, but they definitely know how to use their resources, and they use them well. So my first meal, I forgot, was kapenta. It was nsima with kapenta. And kapenta are these little itty bitty tiny fish that are found in Lake Malawi. And they just take them out and they dry them. And they're very salty. And you just kind of cook them and warm them up. And you eat the entire thing, the head, the tail, everything. So that was kind of fun. So another fun thing about Malawi is their transportation. I had mentioned earlier that they travel around on bikes, but in Zambia, or in Malawi, they actually have what they call cabazas. And that is a bike taxi. So there's a biker, like a guy that pedals, and then they've created this seat on the back for you. And so you pay a guy to transport you from one stop to another, or one place to another, and you ride on the back of his bike. And I just thought that was so fun. I wish I could have ridden a cabaza every day, but anyway, I just love that part of Malawi where the cabazas. So just experience everything that you can while you're there. Safety is always a concern for sisters, and sisters are very well taken care of. Not only by the Lord, but by the mission president and by the other elders. They're very aware of sisters. That's one of the reasons why we were asked to come in at 6, was because it was unsafe in the evening time, and they will make any changes necessary in order to keep the sisters safe. In the MTC, we actually had a training on how to be safe in Africa, and there's lots of different little tips, and but the one that stuck the most and that I relied on the most actually wasn't given in the actual safety portion of our lecture or whatever, but the instructor actually pulled me aside afterwards, and he told me, he's like, you're very beautiful, and you are going to attract a lot of attention, but you can use that to your advantage. And I just feel prompted to tell you that the Spirit will always reveal to you when a situation is bad and that you need to leave. And that happened a lot on my mission. The area is different, but the Spirit is going to protect you, and you're going to be able to make wise choices if you follow the Spirit. Heavenly Father is not going to put you in a dangerous situation, and He will protect you. There were countless times where I would see groups of men come to me with malice in their eyes, and then instantly, before they were close to me, before they came too close, all of a sudden I saw their eyes change, and they kind of got this blank stare, and they walked right past me without even seeing me. And I thought that was really neat, that I didn't even have to worry about me, who I was coming in contact with, and you will learn different things to be aware of who you should and who you should not talk to. You're not going to be able to convert the whole world, and Heavenly Father is going to prepare certain people for you. Some people are not prepared yet, and you should not talk to those people if the Spirit tells you not to talk to them, which is a hard thing, especially when you have that missionary love for people. You want to talk to everybody, and you want everybody to feel loved. But there are some people that Heavenly Father does not want you to approach, and He will tell you. And to parents back at home, your daughters are going to be fine. They will be taken care of. They will be looked after, and I know it was hard for my parents, but they did a good job. They were always there to support me and to accept the things that were happening. So in Malawi and Zambia, but really you hear about them mostly in Malawi. There's a group of people called the Guliwa Mgulus. And they are who settled that area, the main tribe, and their culture is very interesting. They they dress up in the graveyard and they dance, and basically they worship the devil. So anyway, but they are, the traditions have pretty much petered out in where you will be serving. It's more of just a fun tradition that they carry on. So every once in a while, there in one of the areas that I served in Malawi, in Lilongwe, they were having elections for this tribe, right? And so that day we got to the area, and we see this guy that's dressed up in like this, scary African stuff. And the thing that they do is they go around and they like to scare people. The best way to describe it is like a haunted house, where they won't actually touch you, but they want to scare you. And so me and my companion got caught by them once. We had no idea that this was going on, and all of a sudden, like, I felt this group of people following. And we had a branch missionary with us, and he was very aware of things and everything, and so that was really good. But when we looked behind us, there was like over 100 of these Guliwam Kulus all dressed up, like chanting and like jogging after us. Oh my gosh, I have never been more scared in my life. But like, you have to pretend like you're not, and because if you don't show that you're scared, they'll leave you alone. And so luckily there was a member that had a shop close by, and so we quickly darted into his shop and just hung out there for a very long time because every time we thought about like leaving the place, another Guliwam Kulu would come, and we didn't have a way of really leaving except for walking, and we didn't want to get caught by them, because even though, I mean, it was just like a haunted house, and trying to teach in a haunted house is kind of challenging. But really it was really fun, and I just thought that was a neat experience. But their traditions are very, very civil. They just like to go around and scare you. So, and if you give them money, they'll leave you alone, but don't give them money. You're not allowed to give them money at all. Like, that's the church rule. But anyway, it was just, that's my favorite story of the culture in Malawi is how they dress up in graveyards and they try and scare you. Every day that I served, I tried to find the reason why I was there. Like the purpose behind me being in that area at that time and serving the Lord for, like what my purpose was. And it's really fun to watch how the Spirit confirms that you're doing the right thing, even when you feel like you're not. It's good to have the companionship of the Spirit. But there was, in my first area, in Lusaka, there was this couple, and they were returned missionaries. They had both served different missions, and they came home and they got married, and everybody thought life was great. But the wife actually struggled a lot with depression. She was not in a very happy place, and it's hard in that culture to, they don't know a lot about depression and like ways to cope with suicide and suicidal thoughts and things, and when I was 14, I actually did suffer from depression, and so like I related a lot to what she was going through. Anyway, there came a point where she actually did try and take her life, and she was very close to being successful at taking her life. But luckily, she was still living, and me and my companion were able to go to her, and she wouldn't open up to anybody. The branch tried to reach out to her because they realized, something's really wrong, and they cared about her, but she felt like she had to be strong because she was this returned missionary. She was married, she had a baby, and yet she was still having all of these feelings of depression, and she didn't know how to cope with it. And I remember there was this one time where where I finally opened up and I told her my story and the things that I felt and how I was able to overcome it, and how I shared with her that, there's still days that everybody has days that you're sad and that you feel alone and, things like that. But the Lord is always there. He knows how strong you are, and He knows how you can, the things that you can handle at that time. And so for days, for weeks actually, we would go and visit her every day because she needed friends, and really, as missionaries, that's what you can do. You can touch the lives of others, and even as Relief Society sisters, that's our whole calling. Our whole purpose is to reach out and uplift and love one another. And so that was my favorite experience. I knew that I was called at that time in that place for her. Because of what I had experienced earlier in my life. It helped her to be able to overcome it. And even after I was transferred, she wasn't completely through the darkest point, but because of our friendship, she was able to still make it through. So I appreciated that. Everything that you do every day factors into the Lord placing you where He wants you to be. Even just stopping and saying hello to somebody will make it so that you will then meet this other person at this time around this corner. And so it was always neat for me to look back and realize that, if I had not followed the prompting to talk to this person, and I would have missed the opportunity of this other person coming up to me and wanting to talk to me. It's usually the ones that seek you out that are the ones that are ready and prepared. The ones that you seek out are the ones that you're just planting seeds for. You're just another drop in their bucket. And it was always the neatest thing for me to watch an investigator's life change as they accepted different aspects of the gospel and making the steps and the commitments to joining the church. The first time you meet them, they're awesome and they're wonderful, and you can tell that there's something missing in their life. And then as you teach them, it's like suddenly there's this light that comes on, and it just makes sense to them, and they follow up with your commitment. They'll stop drinking, or they'll stop smoking, and then when you come back to them and they say, I feel so much happier now. I feel different. I'm able to do more now, just because I did this like you asked me to. And every day the Africans wake up and they live to survive. They don't really have a future to look forward to. Their circumstances definitely are improving, but they still wake up, and sometimes they don't know where their next meal is going to come from. But then when the gospel comes into their life, they suddenly become more productive. They suddenly have bigger dreams, they have bigger goals, they think more about the future rather than just that day or tomorrow or even the next week. They set goals to really accomplish something in life. And I believe that it's because the gospel is being spread there, and they are opening their hearts and their minds to it. There was a family in Blantyre that I loved. They were members, and they were just awesome. They, Brother Banda was an artist. He actually had a different job. It was a better paying job, but when the missionaries contacted him and he fully accepted the gospel, he realized that he couldn't keep his job because his job required him to work on Sunday. And jobs are very hard to come by, and especially a steady one like his. And yet he knew that he needed to quit his job and figure something else out because he wanted to be able to go to church on Sunday. And so he did, and that was one of the things that brought his wife into the church, that she realized that he was actually serious about this church, that he really wanted to be committed to it. And so she was able to open her heart and her mind and accept the gospel. And they had 3 wonderful little children that are going to be able to grow up in the gospel. They have the articles of faith memorized, and they love primary, and they sing hymns all the time. And I just loved seeing the hope that this family had, because it gave me hope for Africa and the church in Africa and spreading the gospel there. A lot of times you're placed in an area because of your companion, like you need to be with your companion at that time. And sometimes your companions are brought to you because you need them. And so I love to get to know the different sisters and the different challenges that they brought with them, and how we learned how to serve together. In the Zambia Lusaka Mission, it was different for sisters at the beginning. And it was only for sisters. We were actually asked to be inside by 6 p.m., which is very different from what is written in the White Handbook. Because, you shouldn't be returning to your flat till 9 or 10 at the very latest. And anyway, so we were asked to come home at 6 because when it gets dark, it's not as safe to be out, which posed a challenge because, most of the time families are home, getting home together as the time we are leaving the area. So that was always a challenge. But because of that, we had all of this time to study in the evening. And so eventually, as the months and stuff went by, we were able to change our study times from the morning to the evening. And we had all of our district meetings and everything in the evening time because we wanted to be productive in that evening time. But before all of those study changes happened, I actually was able to earn my Young Womanhood Medallion. It did take me it took me about a year to finish, from start to finish, to get everything done. And that was really, really neat because before in Young Women's, I didn't finish. I had 3 experiences to do, and I never did it. And I had always kind of felt sad about that. And so then with all this ample time, missionaries should not twiddle their fingers, you need to be doing something. And so I was able to spend my time working on my Young Womanhood Medallion. And that also helped me to reach out to other young women. In every area that I served, I always tried to find one young woman who was trying to work on her personal progress. And I was able to help her, try and understand the purpose of it and the blessings that come from the Young Womanhood Medallion, the personal progress. And so our very last zone conference, my mission president gave me my Young Womanhood Medallion. And that was really, really sweet for me because he meant so much to me, and my accomplishment meant so much to me, that even though I had long since gotten out of Young Women's, I was still able to fulfill that goal that Heavenly Father wants for young women, and to help the young women in Africa to realize that they have a purpose, and that they can figure out their divine nature and their individual worth as daughters of God. I just thought that was really, really fun. It's always scary to really know what you're supposed to bring and what you're not, and things like that. My mission president actually had started a mission blog, and so I actually wasn't really that nervous about the grocery stores there, because I had seen the shelves. He took a picture of the grocery store, and the shelves were full, and so really pretty much anything that you need, you're going to be able to find food-wise at the grocery store. There's obviously things that are going to be more expensive, but you can find Nutella there, and to me, if you find Nutella somewhere, that's all you need. You can occasionally find Oreos even. There's not a whole lot of cereal, so if you have a favorite kind of cereal and your parents want to send you that, then that's a good thing to send, because they're just really, there's 4 flavors, like Corn Flakes, Bran Flakes, Rice Krispie Treats, and some African cereal. So there's really not a whole lot of cereal options. And as to things that you need to bring before, everything on the list was pretty accurate. It does actually get cold. I was a little bit skeptical on the fact that it said to bring sweaters. I'm like, it's Africa, it's going to be so hot. But there is actually a winter, and it does actually get chilly. It's not freezing cold like it gets in Utah, but it does get cold, and you will need that. And eventually I actually bought warm tights in Zambia, just because I got really cold. So that was our way of keeping warm. Something that my trainer told me once I got there was to separate my clothes into Sunday clothes and area clothes. And so, because you're going to ruin your clothes out in the area. And so coming prepared with that would be good, to have some clothes for the area and some clothes for Sundays and for zone conferences and things that you want to look a little bit nicer for. One of the things that I didn't need were the sandals that they told us to bring. I never used them. And on my mission packet it said closed-toe shoes, or closed-toed sandals. And so it took me a long, long time to find them, and I finally did, and I brought them, and I never used them. So, that's up to you. For the area clothes, I actually wore Jody dresses. I found them at the Sister Missionary Mall, and they were awesome. They were my favorite thing. I would never wear them here, because they're definitely for missionaries. But they still looked like brand new after me wearing them. I only bought 3, so I'd rotate them, and I'd wore them almost every day for almost 18 months, and they lasted. They still looked like brand new, and so I was able to give them away to other people that could use them. That's another thing, Africans, they give you things as gifts. They have nothing, and yet when they love you, they'll give you something. And so it was always nice for me to like give something back. So just be aware of that. And I also really enjoyed the knit skirts. You'll really want to be comfortable in the area, and so anything knit was really nice for me. Yeah, that's what I really brought and appreciated, I think. Serving in the Zambia Lusaka Mission was one of the greatest adventures of my life, and that's what missions are they're these huge adventures, and it's like a platform for the rest of your life. The way that you serve your mission and the things that you do there, they'll either launch you or they'll sink you. And it's very important that you're obedient, that you follow your leaders, because they have the keys, and they are able to receive revelation for your mission. Changes are going to happen. Things are going to change, but the one constant thing is the gospel. It's the priesthood. It's faith, and if you have the faith to obey, then Heavenly Father will bless you. He will give you opportunities to serve others. He will help you see the difference that you're making. For me, that was really important for me to know. And you won't know every difference that you make, but you will be able to know that that you're there for a reason, and that Heavenly Father loves you. One of the biggest things I learned on my mission was that I can do hard things, and everybody's mission is different. You're going to face different trials and challenges, and some of them are going to be very personal to you, and they only have they have to do with your weaknesses and your shortcomings, and then other trials have to do with others. But the Lord is always there. He will always give you strength. Rely on the temple covenants that you've made. In Africa, there's not many temples, and so for 18 months I wasn't able to go to the temple, and yet whenever I needed the strength of the covenants that you make in the temple, words and phrases of the temple ordinances and performances were brought to my mind, and they gave me strength and they gave me courage, and I was able to accomplish the things that Heavenly Father wanted me to. It's just so fun. I would just say, just embrace the culture. Try the food, experience every part of the culture, figure out what they do every day, and how you can bless their life. Learn the language. I was not very good at learning languages, but learn the language. It's fun, and that opens doors in and of itself if you can learn their language. Rely on the words of the prophets. They will give you strength, and they will give others strength. I am just very grateful that Heavenly Father found me worthy to serve the people of Zambia and Malawi. They will change your life, and they will open your eyes to new perspectives and new opportunities. The Savior loves all of His children. And you have the opportunity to share that love with them. And I'm grateful for every opportunity, and it never comes back. You'll never get your mission back, but your mission will always be with you. And your experiences that you have there will actually bless you once you come home. It prepares you for the callings ahead and for the different responsibilities that you'll have in your life. And I love my Savior, and I love my Heavenly Father, and I love all of Heavenly Father's children. And I know that because you have been called to the Zambia Lusaka Mission, that you have a desire to serve the Lord. And I hope that desire never, ever leaves you.
I remember as soon as we flew out, we flew into the Zimbabwe airport and stuff, and I remember finally thinking that this was getting a little bit more like what I was expecting. You know, you come in and it's a small runway with, you see little like broken down rusted planes out on the side and the trees, and drive into Zimbabwe, and it was looking more like I would have expected from going to Africa kind of thing. But Zimbabwe was beautiful and stuff, and I spent 12 hours there in Zimbabwe just to go to meet the mission president and to have a little interview with him and figure out where exactly I was going to be for the next transfer, at least, you know, in the next 6 weeks or so. And so we all, I guess they had a mission home there. It was pretty cool. You know, it was kind of a rundown little mission, well, not the mission home, but like where the missionaries were staying. You know, it was kind of a rundown little place, you know, pretty cool. And then we were there for just a few hours and flew out early in the morning to Zambia. And I went up to an area known as the Copper Belt, into a place called Kitwe. And it was really cool to go up that far. You know, you start driving out and you drive through some, what you would expect to be kind of jungly areas. You know, they put roads through getting up there, and you get to see a lot while you're driving out. And I guess we flew into Zambia, into Lusaka, and then drove from there. So it was about 5 hours up from there, and it was neat coming in and meeting the missionaries that were there. There was 4 of us that were living together at the time right there, and in Kitwe, and most of them were centered right in the city of Kitwe, and we had one area called Kawama that was out probably, I guess it was probably about 30-minute drive for the most part, but it seemed a lot further, you know, getting out there every day. We had to take what they called combis, just kind of these vans they turned into buses and stuff, going out every day, and it was really neat serving out there. And I found, especially in that little village area out there, the people were extremely humble and extremely friendly, and they actually had a group that was meeting there, and I didn't know that they did groups. I'd never heard of a group before, you know, as opposed to a branch or a ward, you know, but they were meeting in a schoolhouse for a while there, and it was, where they were meeting, it was really hard to hear. Like, you could hear all these other churches would meet in the other rooms of the schoolhouse, you know, and I guess if anybody knows much about the Pentecostal churches out there and stuff, they're very loud. And so I remember the first day in church there, I was sitting in the front bench and I couldn't even hear the person 5 feet away from me speaking, you know, and so that was pretty interesting, you know. And I think there were maybe 20 people there the first day at the most, you know, if that, and stuff. But it grew very quickly in Kawama, and we finally got a new place where you could actually understand what the people were saying in front of you, and yeah, that was very, very interesting place to serve. You know, very, very neat place to meet the people and to get to know them. And at the time, the group leader was actually a blind man by the name of Brother Alex. You know, and he was an extremely spiritual guy. You know, and he put every bit of effort of his life into serving the branch there, and one of the guys that he was teaching the most, I think, became the branch president when it finally did become a branch, you know, and we used to call him Brother Chris and stuff. And yeah, but they were extremely spiritual guys. They'd give everything and all their time just to serve. I mean, every time we'd come up, they'd at least have 1 or 2 people that would go around with us and go throughout the village, introducing us to their friends and people they knew, and teaching with us while we went, and translating as well. We had to have translators there. I guess in Zambia there was 72 different languages just in Zambia, and so missionaries just stick with English, you know. But unfortunately we need translators occasionally to translate a lot of what we have there. But it was fun. It was really a cool experience being there as well. So like, yeah, the first week we come in and we're experiencing all those different things, you know, and just kind of getting used to it. I think we didn't have water for the first little while we were out there. Something had gone wrong, and so that was an interesting experience too, you know. And yeah, it was good though. I guess the people that met me there when I got there the first day, they had done actually like hamburgers and tried to cook some potatoes or some fries, I guess they called them chips there, you know, just had attempted to do it, and they did a pretty good job, you know, and it tasted really good. So it was a good first meal out there, and probably one of the last hamburgers I had for a long time, you know. But yeah, I think that was my first companion, who was from Zimbabwe actually. His name was Ella Chitenda, and so he was a really good guy. He was the district leader out there, and so I drove, and we used to drive. I was originally kind of like the chauffeur almost for a while, having to drive from one city to another for the districts that he was in charge of, or the not districts but the missionaries he was in charge of. We went all over the place for that, and yeah, it was pretty cool. We had a blast, and he taught. I guess we learned a lot from the first companion you have. You learn a ton from them. They kind of teach you all the ropes and get you going when you think you know a lot more than you do. You're glad to have them there to help discuss and to figure things out and teach you things while you're there. And but yeah, I guess that's all I can really think about for the first week. So Zambia Lusaka Mission has 2 countries in it right now. At Zambia, I spent 7 months in Zambia, and then Malawi, where I spent 17 months there. Zambia is a lot bigger country and has about 72 languages in it. Malawi, I believe, has 12 different languages throughout the country, and for the size, I think there's like 14 million people there, and so 12 languages is quite a lot for the size of the country. The church in the mission, I believe, had been there, I want to say back before like the 1950s originally, but when they started having like their independence, their struggles for independence, they'll refer to them as wars, but they didn't really fight, you know, during their wars for independence, you know, and they kind of, I guess the church at the time had mostly been white settlers that had lived there, and so while they took their independence, they pushed the white settlers out. And so with it, the church kind of left as well. There wasn't many members that were African there at the time, and so yeah, you'll find like even in Kitwe, there's actually like a building that's owned by the school, that's by a college that's there, that used to be a chapel, you know, and it looks like one, but it's no longer. It's now part of the school. It's a classroom setting there, and so same with Malawi. It was pretty similar, where it had the church. I guess the first place that had the church was a group in Liwonde, and it was actually a branch and became a group. I guess they started having a lot of doctrinal issues that were going on there and apostasy that happened, but it had spread out to Blantyre and to Liwonde, where there's still the church there. And I guess when I was there, unless it's probably spread from there, but Zambia, the church and missionaries were found like in Lusaka, was probably the biggest place, the main city, the capital of Zambia. And then up in the Copper Belt, there were Ndola, Kitwe, and Luanshya that were up there, 3 different little cities or towns, I guess, that were there, where you could find missionaries. And then, yeah, I guess in Malawi, it was just the two cities left. It had Blantyre and I just forgot the name, Liwonde. That we went from Blantyre to teach to Liwonde, and so it was about a 3-hour drive there. And then I just said it and I forgot the name of the other city already, you know. But yeah, so just the 2 cities there, Blantyre at least. But it was growing quick, and I wouldn't be surprised if eventually there's missionaries in Liwonde as it's growing as well. Yeah, I know they were working a lot on just building the church there, because it was really small. There was no wards, no stakes in either of the countries. When I left, there were about 36 missionaries between both countries. And it was more before that, and they were supposed to have a lot more coming. But yeah, there was not very many buildings. Most have meeting houses or places they meet in. I think there's one chapel in Malawi. There's one in Blantyre, and then there's quite a few in Lusaka. but there's no chapels, at least up till now, in the Copper Belt area, and so it's all meeting houses and wherever they can find to meet that they do. And so yeah, I think it's been the church there has been fully active for probably about, I want to say 17 years now. So it's still very much on its growing roots, there, and are very bottom steps of the church growing there, and the very basic foundation of it. And I guess that was a lot of what we did while we were there, was try to build in that foundation. And we found that there was a lot of like, as you get members, they bring in a little bit of what they're used to, and so there was a lot of learning and stuff with how the church works and its functions, and trying to bring the church's teachings and doctrines in, and as well as the way that the regular operation of it, even like the young men's and stuff, or young women's and all those things weren't fully operational there, and the people weren't entirely sure, how to do this, how to do that. Branch presidents were learning, getting used to the handbook of instructions kind of stuff, and it was quite interesting. I guess we were doing a lot of keeping our eye out and reporting to the mission president, just so that things could be kept on the right track, and that false doctrine wasn't taught and started going in, and different things like that. And so it was really cool as well, I guess, you really begin to appreciate what we have here, is even in the church, with how well it's been founded, and how it's really grown and functions. You don't realize what goes into that, and how much the people need to learn and to act on it to be able to make something run like the church organization does here. In Malawi, transportation was pretty simple. I mean, most of it was on foot. You're walking pretty much everywhere you go. You could find, like, when people were traveling somewhere, like if they're going to town or something, they take what they call a combi, which is just like a blue bus, like a blue minivan, I guess, or yeah, that they just put a bunch of seats in, and you're sitting like this close to 5 other people cramming in on the seat and stuff. And a few people have cars. There's not very many, but there's a handful of cars, especially closer to the city. We'd find that near the city there was a lot of like gated communities. Well, everybody has a gate, I guess, as far as like anybody who has a house, even the missionaries. We all have like walls and gates around, just to keep like thieves and stuff out. Yeah, we found though that each of those houses is just like a house, just surrounded by a wall with its yard and stuff there, and just kind of like a fenced-in house here. But most of the people live in mud housing in Malawi. They have they make these mud bricks that they build their houses out of, and they live mostly in their families. They usually have big families, and I mean, one guy had like 17 kids we met, and he, I guess they all just lived in the same house for the most part until they got older, and sometimes they'll live there for till they're quite old and get married and move out. And many times, even when they're married, they'll still live with their family and just build another house close by or whatever there. I guess as far as like shopping and stuff goes for the missionaries and for them, like each little village has like their street market, where there's tons of people out selling whatever it is they grow. Most people do have a garden. A lot of corn and stuff is out there for sure, and they'll just sell anything extra that they have to make extra money and trade with things there. And as far as jobs go that they had out there, pretty much everybody farmed in some manner or another, usually growing the maize stuff. Pastors and religious leaders are probably the most popular job out there. You'll find a street on every, like 2 or 3 churches on every street, and stuff out there. And they live pretty well compared to many of the people there, as all the people that are out there are very faithful and they try to do what's right, and so they all go to church for the most part. A lot of them don't work, at least don't have a steady job. They do what they call piecework. Wherever they can find work, they'll take it and do a piece of work here and a piece of work there, and just live on whatever little income they have or can find there. We knew a few people who were policemen. There's a lot of police there, which it's great to know police if you're out there, because a lot of them are very corrupt. And so if you can find some, especially if they're members of the church or things like that, they're good to know. Keep you out of a lot of problems with cops that you shouldn't ever be in the first place. That wouldn't be an issue had it not been for the corruptness and stuff that was there. I had a couple of people that were construction workers and things out there, and just doing construction on the buildings that were there. But for the most part, it's a very agricultural based living there. They live on very little, I guess. Oh, and the other major popular job was like a guard. A lot of the people have guards that come and just kind of watch their place, and they're not armed or anything, but they're someone that's there to watch while they're gone or out and around. And I think they live on about $30 a month is what they make out there for the most part. And that's probably the most popular thing. You'll see them all the time, and they'll be doing gardening and different things like that too, and stuff for them while they're there. We had guards too, and they were always great to teach and great people to be around and get to know really well. And the more they trust you, the less likely you are to have them steal too, which is good, But yeah, I guess that's kind of, they work at least 6 days out of the week there. They're always working and busy. They work long hours without getting much for it. So I guess if they're busy workers, it's really hard to catch them. Otherwise, those without jobs are relatively easy to go whenever you feel like it and catch them somewhere, if you know where they usually are. And they just kind of live on whatever they can grow and keep there for the most part and trade for, and that's basic day-to-day life, I guess, there. Malawi is I guess it's pretty interesting with the cultures. I guess a lot of Western cultures kind of working its way into the society and stuff there. But especially when you get out into the villages, it becomes a lot different, where you have to be careful in some extent what you do. Especially with like elders and the people that are older out there, they expect you to show them a lot of respect, and I guess that goes with everybody you meet as well. You show them respect. I know a lot of the times, especially when somebody gives you something, they kind of like clap their hands together and thank you as they're kind of nodding, before they accept it, and that just kind of shows like an appreciation for it. I guess especially with getting the people to listen to you, like they listen a lot better and they respect you if you at least try to speak their language or try to pick up some and at least learn greetings in their own personal language, whatever the language is in the area. We found that though they know English, they don't always respect English as much, but they have no problem speaking it with you if you attempt to use theirs. They like you to use their native language if you can, as much as possible. But yeah, just learning simple greetings makes a big difference with them being receptive to what you have to share and just listening to you. As far as food, it's not considered very polite to reject food. Most of the times they'll try to share something with you. But at the same time, they're very understanding. Like if you tell them you're full or something, we used to always tell them, like takuta, meaning I'm full, all the time. And they'd understand that, as you're going, and don't take it offensive. If you just reject food, they don't like that very much. And even though they don't have any, they'll always offer you food, and especially if they're cooking or something at the time. Which is a great way to be there and be talking to them and teaching them as well. A lot of foods, though, they'll often tell you at different times. They told us not to eat the food in the areas and stuff because of missionaries getting sick. And so, yeah, you just kind of have to fill out how the best way is with them to show them or whatever to not to decline the food, to taking the food and stuff. And normally it was we'd tell them we were full, or something like that. We just ate and we're stuffed, and that seemed to work the best. Yeah, other than that, I guess a lot of the times when you go to villages, whoever the village leader, the chief is, likes to meet you, as you come in and stuff. I guess probably by now a lot of those areas have met a lot of the missionaries, and so it's not too big of an issue with them coming back and forth. But I know they at least like to know who we are, kind of thing. And a lot of the times we had to meet with a bunch of the pastors and stuff in the different areas, which was always interesting because they want to have them kind of like as an accepted like religious leader. They kind of want to know what you're teaching and kind of stuff like that, and they don't always like you after a while, but it doesn't become too much of an issue. Yeah, I guess other than that, it's really pretty, basic mannerisms. I mean, you eat with your hands, so you don't have to worry about table etiquette or anything like that, but yeah, it's pretty just basic what you would expect to be polite or to be accepting here is especially good there. They have very touchy feelings, they like knowing that you care. You can expect them to hold your hand very much. That was a really weird thing to get used to, having a guy come up and hold your hand, while he's standing next to you, and that was always like a gesture of friendship, and stuff there. And if you deny them your hand or at least something like that, then they don't take that very kindly either. At least hold it for a little while and find some excuse to use your hand for something else, if you're not comfortable with it. But yeah, past that, it's pretty simple as far as culture and stuff goes. You'll adapt real quickly to just the way people are, and they're all very kind and very helpful people. They'll give you anything, and so just kind of show the same in return, and you'll be accepted, there. And if you're not kind or things like that, you'll be rejected very quickly from them. The people won't like listening to you or having anything to do with you, and so it's basics of it there. So Malawi, I guess the main thing they have there is like ground corn meal or maize meal. They have maize there, they call it maize there and stuff, and it's a popular thing all in Southern Africa, and everywhere you go they'll call it something different. Where actually when I was in the MTC, one of the guys had him do some of this, and I thought it was mashed potatoes on there, and I remember taking my fork and sticking it in to eat the mashed potatoes, and the whole thing came up, and my first thought is they have no idea how to make mashed potatoes here, but like it's just like they grind it up like into powder, into cornmeal, and then they'll mix it with water and things and make it where you actually eat it with your hands and stuff. You just kind of like shape it into it's always like with soup or some kind of what they refer to as soup or relish, and you just kind of make like a little cup out of it, like a tortilla scoops kind of chip, and scoop up some stuff and eat it like that, and but that's the main thing they have there. A lot of chicken. You'll eat every part of the chicken and stuff. We did a lot of that. I remember chicken hearts and chicken liver and intestine and the whole 9 yards. We do all kinds of things there, and that's probably the most common meat that they do. A lot of goat. We had, I guess in Malawi especially, they had what they called mbewa, where it's like basically rats that they've caught, field mice as they call them and stuff. They look like rats though. They just kind of like shish kebab them and they boil them. And I guess some places they say they peel them off. Every time I always saw them, we go to the market and there'd just be piles of these dead rats, and they boil them just like that. Like they catch them and eat them, fur and everything, and it was the most disgusting thing ever. I never ate that, I'll be honest. I couldn't get that in my mouth, but like did a lot of grasshoppers. Caterpillars was a major thing there. I can't remember the word they used for them. I guess fruit was one of my favorite things there. They had like fruit was all over the place. They had tons of mango trees everywhere you went, and I guess something they called manna. I'd never actually figured out what it really is, but it looks kind of like a small apple, but it has like orange size seeds in it, and it's super sweet, and just any kind of fruit, like exotic fruit that you would think of here, you can pretty much get your hands on out there, and bananas all year round, yeah, I guess they have what they call one of their favorite times of year is the Ishwa season, and Ishwa is termites pretty much. You know how they have the big they're like, you watch Tarzan, you know how like you see them like blowing out the giant termites and eating them there and stuff, and they have the same kind of big termites, you know, and they love them. You know, they fry them up most of the time, and when they fry them, they taste kind of like peanut butter for a while until you let it sit in your mouth, you know, but the kids like eating them straight out of the mounds, you know, and stuff, and they kind of taste like blood when they're just alive, you know. But yeah, they like every season, there's a season every year where they just like start flying like crazy, and people are eating them all the time, you know, and it's like their main course there during that time. There is they do a lot of I guess another season they have like these giant green grasshoppers that will come in once a year too. That becomes a favorite meal for them as well. Those aren't so great either, you know, but they're not bad, you know. And so I guess Malawi is very much fish based as well. They have a lake right there. Lake Malawi is half the country, you know, and so you'd eat all kinds of things, and they have what they call kapenta, which is pretty much like, I don't know, little tiny fish that they would just dry out, and you just eat them like that. You eat everything, like the smaller fish they catch, you just eat them whole head, everything, you know. They just kind of boil them and cook them up in their tomato soup kind of thing, you know, and you just eat them with that enzima and go for it, you know. But they also have like chambo and stuff in Malawi, which I think is like a tilapia, like a freshwater tilapia kind of thing, you know, and that was really good. You get the bigger fish a lot better than eating all the little ones, you know. I guess as far as Zambia goes, the food's relatively similar. They call it nshima, I think, there, which if you do it backwards, they will give you a hard time about it. If you call it nsima in Zambia or nshima in Malawi. But again, a lot of like soup-based things there. They, I guess, just kind of, the fish isn't so big in Zambia. There's not like a water source like that there, and when you do eat fish there, I got sick the one time I had fish there, so I'd kind of avoid that if you can, you know. Goat was probably the one thing I ate a ton there. Goat and mangoes. For the most part, Malawi and Zambia were extremely safe, you know, places. I think the sisters had more issues than the majority of us. Mostly because a lot of them wanted to marry them, you know, yeah, I guess especially the spirit kind of teaches, you know, and protects, especially while you're there. But we had a couple instances where, you know, you just start going down the street and you just have this bad feeling. I guess the biggest issue a lot is the amount of drinking that's out there, especially among the Africans and stuff there. Is really, really high. I think Zambia was something like 90-something%. It was rated like the drunkest nation in the world when I first got there, and they outlawed some of this stuff afterwards. But like, you start getting around a lot of drunk people, you know, you gotta want to be careful, you know, what you're doing. We had some interesting situations that could have gone really bad with them, and that was in both Malawi and Zambia, but especially in Zambia. But you'll find that a lot of the people, especially the ones that you think are the most dangerous, will actually be there to stand up and protect you as missionaries. They're very Christian oriented, I guess, in those countries, and anybody they think is, you know, holy in any sense, you know, they're very protective of them, which is nice. We had a little bit of robbery issues in some areas. You'll find that, you know, like they said, you kind of want to follow different routes home. They'll kind of go over that kind of stuff in the MTC different nights and have different options. I know there's like in Malawi, there's a place in Manioe, like a bridge that we occasionally run into people on, and thank goodness I'm not a very big guy, but I was bigger than most of the people there, you know, and stuff, and it worked out pretty well because we didn't have too much issue with that, nothing that we couldn't get out of. We had a couple just little problems that never became a real issue. We did have a couple, right as I was leaving, there was some robbery issues. I guess they were finding out where missionaries were staying, I guess, from one another, and they'd actually break into the homes and stuff with knives and whatnot and rob a few missionaries. We had a sister that was robbed at the gate to her door with a garden hose. Actually, he didn't have anything special, but just kind of held a garden hose under his jacket, and she flipped out, and gave her new packages and stuff to him. She just got in the mail from home and stuff, and she was uptight for the next month, but they were fine. We never had any missionaries that were really injured at all. We had one that got robbed. At knife point, again, an elder when I first got there, and they cut his backpack off of him and stuff and took his backpack. But for the most part, it was relatively safe. I've heard different things about South Africa being a lot worse, and you hear a lot about that in the MTC. But Malawi and Zambia weren't nearly as bad, And yes, especially for the guys, we were really safe all the time, and sisters didn't have any bad issues. Just a couple where they, thought it was worse than it was, and went for it, and they were guys. They kind of freaked out about them, but nothing major. I guess I was a zone leader there, so I heard a lot about things like that from them. But yeah, I guess that was most of it for crime and safety, I guess. And religious-wise, I guess both areas are very Christian. They have basic beliefs in Christ. They know the Bible extremely well. And so I remember the first time they started throwing out Bible verses at me, and I was like, oh my goodness, I don't even know what you're talking about, And so, that was one thing I found was extremely important, was studying this Bible and the basic standard works that were there as well, not just the Book of Mormon and those things, but to incorporate it with the Bible as well. Because they have a firm belief in the Bible for the most part, and so it's good to be able to build on that knowledge that they have and what they have a belief in as well, and they quickly gain a belief in the Bible. But if you don't know it, a lot of times they think you're not really Christian, and they won't listen to you, kind of thing, and I guess one thing we found as well were that a lot of the pastors and stuff don't like us because many members join. We'd be teaching, when I first got there, we'd be teaching, minimum 30 lessons a week, doing most 20 to 30 at the least. And there's a long lessons and stuff. We didn't have any problem getting in people's doors most days. The hardest part was figuring out, who's the most prepared to receive it that you need to focus on, and who's not, that you should be looking for somebody else at the time. But you'll find like a lot of the pastors at the places there preach a lot about us, and many of them think that we're kind of satanic and demonist, demons and stuff out there. And so I remember we'd walk in like Zambia, and they start yelling like Holy Ghost fire at you, thinking you'd like burn up and stuff like that, which was always funny, because you just start walking towards them and shake their hand and they'll all scatter and run, But I guess most are just like, I almost want to say non-denominational, kind of, just a bunch of churches that are randomly started by a bunch of random people that are out there. A lot of people that believe they're prophets. You'll find we met a couple self-proclaimed prophets that were pretty interesting conversations with them. We also find that like some of these TV prophets that do like these miracles on TV and stuff are really big out there. You'll hear probably about like TB Joshua and Pastor Chris and things like that. And they're guys that do TV shows and do these miracles or so on TV, and a lot of people believe it and stuff. They're very faithful people. They believe just about anything that most people tell them. That's why it's so important, I guess, to, as you're teaching them, to express the necessity of their finding out for themselves through prayer that it's true, and not just to believe you like they believe most of what goes around there. But yeah, I guess the Pentecostals are a big thing, and if you want to hear a lot of singing and dance kind of stuff, that's pretty much where you'll find it. I didn't experience a lot of like singing and dance outside of a religious or church aspect while I was there. I don't think maybe one or two guys playing and singing on the side of the road, but like you can definitely like find the choruses and the choirs and stuff singing and stuff with all the churches. You'll hear that all the time walking around there. Churches are always loud with keyboards and people singing, and I guess as they just enjoying it out there and stuff, doing that. And everything's very, very Christian based. You won't find anything that's extremely secular, like with their music or anything like that. It's all centered on the Lord and things like that. And so that's one great thing that they have going for them, which is why I think they accept the gospel so quickly and so easily. Malawi has 12 languages. All Zambia has 72. Both speak English, so that's the one thing that you'll need to know. It's the only one that's super important, I guess. They as your call will probably be English speaking unless they adjust that anytime soon, which I don't know when that will happen. But I guess in Malawi, the common language is Chewa, or Chichewa, as a lot of them you'll hear them say. And like, yeah, it's the most common greeting you'll hear with Chewa is like Mulibwanji, basically, how's it going, kind of thing, you know. And an answer is just kind of like Bueno, it's going good. Or I guess in Malawi they say Indi Bueno or Tidi Bueno, which is Tidi Bueno is we are good, we're doing well, you know, which is where you'll be with your companion. The correct greeting for that. I guess other things that are important there, like thank you is an important one to know. They'll say Zikomo, which is thank you, or Zikomo Kwambiri, which is thank you very much. Zikuenda is how's it going as well, and the response for that is Zikuenda, actually, it's going pretty well. And I guess that's really the basic kind of things. I don't remember the language super well. I haven't had much chance to practice it since I've been here. You know, not too many people speak it. I guess in Zambia, you'll find Nyanja is the most common language that's there. Oh, and I guess Malawi as well. Like Imsale Bueno is go well or stay well, and Mwende Bueno is go well. Like, so if you're leaving somebody's house, you say Imsale Bueno. Basically stay well, or if they're leaving you say Mwende Bueno, travel well, you know, and things like that. I don't remember day and night greetings anymore, but I guess Nyanja was pretty similar, which is like Zambia and Lusaka, they speak Nyanja. Mulibwanji, the difference is like with in Zambia, you don't respond like Tidi Bueno or anything like that. You say Bueno, Mulibwanji, Bueno, how are you? Then ask them how they are and stuff like that. Zikomo is still like the thank you, and those are, thank goodness, the main parts. Those are the same. You know, once you get a little deeper, it changes up a little bit. You know, but like then I guess the only other language was for like my first 12 weeks I was out there was up in the Copper Belt. Oh man, I can't even remember anymore what was up there. I remember up there, I'm drawing a total blank, I can't even remember. So Twatotela was thank you and stuff up there. And the only thing I remember that was really interesting there was they always put mqui or umqui at the end of it, which was like to give respect and stuff. And if you were speaking to someone normally, you'd say like mqui, and like if it was an elder, you'd always respond like umqui, showing like extra respect to whatever you were giving. And then like you'd ask Mulishani is how's it going and stuff there. And that was called Bemba, was the language they spoke there, was Bemba. And that was an interesting one as well. I didn't pick up much of that at all. Chewa was probably the easier of the ones to pick up because I lived there for quite a while. But again, since you're not teaching it in the language, you know, and you're called to speak English, it's not very many people pick it up, missionary-wise, pick it up very, very much. And I guess there's really not a whole lot of need to, as they understand English very well, considering that they were all taught, and like all those countries were once colonized by Britain, so they speak English perfectly, or relatively well. They speak the British English and stuff that's out there. And I guess as far as speaking to them, you'll learn to speak very slowly. I used to be told all the time, too much slang, because they couldn't understand what I was saying, speaking too fast, you know. And but you learn to speak very slowly and very pronunciated. Yeah, much like if you were to hear someone speaking from Britain, I guess. And as long as you talk slow and pronunciated, they'll be able to pick up what you're saying, and just don't rush too much. And something I need to remember and start doing again, But so like as far as the weather there, they have a dry and a wet season. It's hot most of the year round. Doesn't get very cold. But during the wet season, I think is usually like from November to April, and it rains pretty much every day there. I remember it was really dry and hot for the first little while, like especially October and stuff. It was very hot, and like then all of a sudden, just one day, like they were saying it's supposed to rain, and it's not been raining. It's getting late, and just remember the first day, you just hear like a clap of thunder, and in 5 minutes, it's pouring so hard you can't see anything, And like we stepped outside and we were soaked, just like a 2-minute walk from our house to where the bus is. We ran it like super fast, and we were drenched by the time we got in the first day. But I guess, once the rainy season hits, it does rain pretty much every day. And it would rain so much sometimes the roads you're walking on become like rivers. I remember in Zambia, it was one of the main roads they drove on. We were up to our knees walking in, and same with Malawi as well. Like some little villages there, it would rain and all the roads just become waterways, and you're walking in water clear up to your knees and mud, and so especially since most of the roads there aren't very well paved. Like you'll have your main roads that are paved, especially in the cities like Lusaka and that, but when you get out into the little villages and stuff, it just, it's totally mud, And so, you expect to walk with wet feet for a while during the rainy season, and and I know a lot of the African missionaries don't like walking in the rain. We ended up doing a lot of it though. Still, a few of them didn't care, and and we walked a lot in the rain because a couple of our areas were probably a good 40 minutes walk just to get to where we needed to start teaching, and so it's pouring and there's lightning going on everywhere, and me and a companion of mine actually got struck one day going up the hill. We got hit by lightning. Like you couldn't see like a big jolt, but it just started feeling weird. And he had an umbrella, and I remember watching like the electricity jump from the umbrella over a thing to his hand and then to me, and it was just a weird feeling. We were lucky it didn't hurt us at all. It just felt really weird, and we got out of that rainstorm real quick. But I guess there wasn't too much weather-wise other than that. Just a lot of rain during those months, and really dry and really hot the other months. And it's nice when it rains too, because like especially Malawi, it just gets really green and really beautiful all the way through, and you feel like you're walking into an oasis somewhere out there, and it's beautiful, especially that time with the mountains and stuff in Malawi and stuff. It becomes quite the scenic view there everywhere you go, and so you start seeing all the animals that are around come out, and the birds and stuff all over the place, and it becomes quite amazing. So weather other than that was pretty basic. No hurricanes, no tornadoes or anything like that, So it was, I guess Malawi had an issue at one time. They all the houses out there, for the other than like the richer people's houses out there, are made of mud bricks and the like. So Malawi had a time where it rained nonstop for a whole week, and most of the houses collapsed, I guess, during that time. And so we ended up, our house was okay. It was one of the better houses that were there, and stuff wasn't made of mud bricks or anything, but we spent a lot of time there helping people rebuild and relocate and move and secure their stuff before any of it got stolen and things like that. And it was a pretty interesting time for a lot of them, just because, imagine finding yourself homeless, your whole wall's fallen in one day, and you're lucky that you didn't get caught in it, while it's coming down, and so that was quite an interesting time. We had a lot of members even that lost their homes as well to that time, and I assume they were able to rebuild by now, but so I guess that was as severe as the weather gets, is prolonged rain. But it was really wet, like everything was a river then, and it was quite a neat experience though, going through that. There was a lightning bolt and stuff that were there. There was like, I guess, telephone wires or so, I guess their power lines and stuff running up, and so we think it actually hit like the power line near us, because it was raining in and out. There's like spaces of time that day where it would stop raining, and so me and my companion, we decided, okay, let's take off and get there, because it had been really pouring and bad weather that day, and so we had a little break, so we took off, and it started raining on us. We were going up our area was a place called Manioe, and it was just like on a hill. It was this village out ways away, just kind of like on the top of this hill. And so we're just going up the road up this hill, and it started pouring on us again. And we're like, okay, let's just get there, and not worry about getting wet at all, because it was bad weather, and we just it just had this funny feeling, it just felt weird, like your whole body just started feeling tingly. And we think the actual strike just kind of hit like the telephone pole there, but just like through the rain we got maybe some of the current, because I remember like he just holding his umbrella, he had like a little metal bracket here and then his rubber grip, and I remember seeing it just like kind of like when you shock somebody with static, if you look real carefully, you can see that kind of jolt. Or if you ever shock yourself in a car fixing it, you see the arc kind of going of the electricity. And I saw it just kind of arc to his hand, and then I was squeezed underneath him near his hand there, and I watched it jump from him to me, and then my fingers, like that were out in the rain, just were tingling. Like the tips of my fingers were tingling the rest of the day. So I don't know if it went out my fingers or what happened, but they were just tingly the whole day, after that. And it was the weirdest feeling, and I guess it didn't hurt or anything, and like I said, we probably just caught some of the off draft of it, just kind of passing through the rain, caught his umbrella, but we didn't catch like the main bolt. I don't believe, I think we would have felt it a little bit more in that case. But yeah, that was an interesting experience. we took the next house we could find and waited until the rain stopped before we went any further. And so, which worked out okay, and I think we actually ended up teaching some people that were avoiding the rain as well, at that time, which was really neat. But yeah, so that was my first experience with lightning like that. Don't play with the snakes, So it's a lot of snakes there. I used to actually keep a machete in my bag for some of the snakes, and stuff, and we used it a few times. I guess they have lots of deadly snakes out there you'll run into frequently. So, but I mean, for the most part, you can avoid them pretty well. And yeah, like I said, keep a machete, and it works great too. So, but yeah, monkeys were an issue occasionally. We had a couple missionaries that got messed up with some baboons. They saw a little baboon and they went kind of like Tarzan. It was very much like Tarzan, where you see a little baboon and you go a little too close and the rest of them chase after you. And so we went on a couple zone activities to like game parks and stuff where they saw baboons and did just that, and a bunch of baboons chased them right up onto this big rock, and it was really funny. You see all these elders out running and one of them falls, and they run right past him, but they go after everybody else and you get them stuck up on the rocks. And so yeah, avoid the animals for the most part. I guess like Luonde has a lot of crocodiles and things like that, and so you don't want to go too close to the water most of the time. Hippos and crocodiles aren't too much fun to play with, but yeah, so that was an interesting thing too, as you get out there, just kind of, I guess the elephants are really dangerous as well. We had a couple issues, well, not issues with elephants, we had some where they weren't very happy and we thought we were about to have an issue, but nothing that, we were pretty well protected going through and got out okay. So, but yeah, I guess they have problems like flipping cars and stuff where you are, and they'll stampede some of the houses. But most of the areas that missionaries are don't live where the animals are, so you're not having too much of an issue there. Snakes are the only thing you run into on a regular basis. So I don't know many of the snakes that were there. They didn't really give us like a crash course on them, but like the people, they just think everything's poisonous, and stuff. And so you couldn't really go by what all the people were saying. Even like the chameleons, they thought chameleons were poisonous and used to freak out whenever you'd catch them and stuff. And if the kids are always around, and I have a chameleon in my pocket one day and pull it out and they all take off running thinking I have something that's going to kill them, but I guess we saw a couple pythons, which of course they're just smaller ones, nothing huge, and they're nothing dangerous at all to people. And the only other thing that we saw that was potentially dangerous for sure, I guess we had one missionary that ran into like a king cobra while they were out there. They have like the mambas, the black and green mambas that are out there, and those are very poisonous. In like 20 minutes it'll kill you kind of thing if they bite you. But yeah, we ran into a couple bigger ones of those, a lot of smaller ones too. But yeah, we caught some of them at a good time where we was able to hit them with the machete and just kind of pop off their head real quick and not worry about it. But we had, I don't know what it was. There was one snake some of the missionaries in Malawi were kind of fighting with, and they were trying to beat it with a broom, which didn't go so well for them, of all things, but just made it mad, and it was just like striking the broom. But yeah, I guess you'll know as far as like in the villages and stuff where they are, because all the kids go and start throwing rocks at them like crazy, and so they'll usually find them before you do, or if you find them first, they'll take care of them for you, but yeah, they I guess you'll see them a lot, like when you start getting out into some of the village areas, walking through some of what they call the bush and stuff out there. Getting there, we had some, and a few just in our backyard, but of course our backyard was pretty well full of trees and the like. It wasn't just like a desert yard like in Utah or anything here, and but yeah, just watch out for most of them. If you don't know what it is, it's probably poisonous. So there weren't very many that weren't. And so there were, all the snakes I saw, at least other than the pythons, were poison as far as what people were telling me. So yeah, I mean, it might be a good thing to even study and look up before you go, is what kind of snakes are in the area, and try to know what they are so you know what to worry about and what not to, But yeah, so I guess if you start seeing a lot of toads, supposedly there's not many snakes there. But yeah, this means they're not eating them, but that's what they eat a lot there. So yeah, I've run into many people in my life, and especially as I was serving a mission, that were very, very frightened because of different things that they had heard about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And because of it, many people have not listened to or sought out to learn more about the church. But I would strongly encourage for any of you that are listening, and to go by faith, and to seek out from the Lord, to know for yourself if things are true. Take the opportunity to seek and to learn about the church and the gospel that has been restored to the earth. I know for myself that it is true. I've had the chance to seek and to ask the Lord, and I know for myself that He does in fact answer our prayers, and that with any question, especially one that pertains to our eternal salvation, the Lord will answer those prayers. And I've received many for myself, and I know that you will as well, as you listen, and especially as you ask with faith in the Lord's name. I guess that's the one thing I've been grateful for, is the knowledge and testimony I have of Jesus Christ that has come through the gospel and through the Spirit, as I've learned about Him, and as I've heard prophets and apostles speak of Him. And I know for a fact that He does live, and I know that this is His church, and that through those apostles and those prophets, He speaks to us and guides us today on the earth. I'd encourage you to find that out for yourself again, and I give you a challenge as well to learn a little bit about it, to find out and to hear the words of those apostles and prophets. And I promise that as you listen and as you pray, you will recognize Christ's voice as He's preaching and teaching you through these people. I know that He does speak to them, and I'd like to give you that challenge, because I know it will change your life for the better, and that you will come to fully understand the Lord's purposes for you in this life, and understand the full potential of what He knows you can become as well, and that you'll recognize His hand in everything that you do, and how the paths that He's put you on thus far has been there for the benefit of yourself as well as for others, no matter what those circumstances may be. They can benefit us and bring us closer to the Lord if we let them, and we seek to come closer to Him. Again, I'm grateful for the gospel in my life, and for the blessings and guidance that the Lord's given me. And I'd like to leave this with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. we had all kinds of different experiences that I guess helped me grow personally. I think that was something that was important for me while I was out there. I think more than anything, my testimony grew of the gospel and things in small and large experiences while we were there. But we had the opportunity as well to see many others that were converted. I guess originally when we got there, there was every other week there'd be about 30 people that were baptized in each area. Just every missionary group that was there would have a few people that were being baptized, and so there's a lot of people that were accepting the gospel. And it was interesting to find out, just coming to understand, I guess, the will of the Lord in a lot of things. And I remember in some areas, especially like my first area when I was out there, we had interesting experiences with people getting sick. Malaria was very prevalent out there. A lot of people die of malaria out there every year. And I remember one thing I always thought was interesting was there was one person that we met that their daughter was extremely sick with malaria, and they'd gotten medicine and stuff for it, and she was just really sick. And I remember one of the missionaries that was there gave her a blessing. I was there with them at the time we were on exchanges for the day, and I always thought it was interesting because he gave her a blessing, and I don't know, but anyway, the things which he said didn't exactly happen. She ended up dying and stuff just a few days later, actually, and so like I guess that was something that always made me kind of interested. How is this working? But then it wasn't even a few weeks later, just like the next transfer that was there. I remember we went to another guy's house who we started teaching, and I hadn't been teaching him super long, but he's a pretty impressive guy, that was there, and as far as reading and studying the scriptures goes, and I guess he came down with malaria as well, pretty bad, and I remember coming in to see him one day, and he was just, sweating and, not feeling well for sure. And I remember my companion and we gave him a blessing that day, and just to see the total difference, and you come from seeing one person who received a blessing and actually died later instead of being healed, and to see a guy who we give a blessing and then my companion insists on teaching him the entire plan of salvation in the long way, so we're there a little over an hour, and to watch him as by the time we left, he's perfectly fine. You see a lot of things that are there and make sense, or that are miracles while you're out on your mission. I guess you'll notice many small miracles, not just the big ones. But it really is important to understand that a lot of things that happen there are based upon the Lord's will, and we can't always determine what that is, because those miracles and things are very possible and they happen, but not on our time, and we can't always explain why they happen the way they do. But I remember there were many different small miracles we saw every day. There was one time we were having a baptism, and stuff, and the people who had the keys to the church was locked up with the wall and everything. We couldn't get a hold of them. They weren't at home, and couldn't get in, and we ended up we jumped the wall and the spikes and stuff, which tore up my pants really good. For baptism, I had a giant gash in my suit pants, but we get in, and again, everything it was like a giant hot tub kind of thing we had outside, like a movable hot tub kind of deal or a tub in general that we used for a baptismal font. And so we clean it out and fill it up with a hose and everything there before the baptism. And we got there, and it's locked up inside like a little garden house, that day. And we tried the lock, tried everything to get in, and it happened a couple weeks before, and we were able to get the stuff with a stick and pull it over to where we could get it out. And this time they locked it up tight, and there was no way they put it in a cage in the back, and stuff. There was no way of getting it out. And I remember we tried the lock and everything, and just, simple prayers, the lock popped right open, and things like that would happen on a weekly basis, being out there. And I guess it's important to pay attention to the little things that add up. Not as you listen to those and see those, you'll see the miracles that happen on your mission, and things like that, as well as people that you meet. As far as bigger things that we run into, I guess we had one sister that we've been teaching this family for quite a while, And they were at first quite slow to become really active participants in learning, but they were very eager to receive the gospel and things like that. And after a while, they became where they come to church frequently. And we used to, after a while, we ended up setting like time periods that they had to like be coming to church for most cases, based on the Spirit, of course, as to when they could be baptized, because we find there was a lot of retention issues where people would be baptized really quickly, and without the support of, lots of members that are very well experienced and knowledgeable of the gospel, they'd fall away pretty quickly. And so we'd have them coming for a while, and this family had been coming for a while, and the husband was really ready to be baptized, and the wife, she didn't speak any English at all, but she was a little less active in her learning of the gospel. You couldn't always expect, her to be 100% on top of things, and there for it. And we weren't entirely sure that she was ready, to receive the gospel. But we found that, she started becoming a little more active. And I guess I remember very much this one time where we were talking and we expressed our concern to her, about her being baptized and then, going inactive again, because she would have these little like stints, where she'd be fully active and then not at all. And I didn't speak the language at all there. I hadn't been there for long enough to learn anything that was there. But we remember she starts, all of a sudden she becomes worried that we're not going to let her be baptized, and we were debating if we were praying about very hard if it was the right thing for her at this time, or if she wasn't going to become or stay in the church. And like we remember very well, she bore a testimony, and I understood I couldn't tell you what exactly, she said, or if she said it in Chewa, but I understood exactly what she was saying word for word. It didn't sound like English, but I knew what it meant, while she was giving it, and it was really interesting to my companion. He picked it up really quickly. He was from Zimbabwe. He picked up the language quick, and he went to go and tell me exactly what she said. And it was cool to be able to say, I know what she said. I don't know how, but I know exactly what she said. And the Spirit bears witness and testifies of those things, while you're there. And I guess some of the coolest things, we taught one guy in Zambia actually, where he was a very smart guy. He'd actually gone to, I think it was the Netherlands, to go to school for photography and stuff like that. He'd won a scholarship out there, and went for a while. And it was cool to be with him, and I guess we spent a lot of time teaching him. But he was very receptive to the gospel, but he had a lot of issues in his life that he'd run into, and just seeing the change in his life as he slowly accepted the gospel, and a lot of the addictions and things that he had still stuck with him, but you could see a total change in the way he went from when we first met him. He dressed very kind of scruffily, and looked scruffy. He was drinking a lot, and things like that. And just to be able to be there and watch the gospel as he receives it, and he begins to exercise the things and practice the things that he's learning. Just see the change in his life, and he did eventually join the church, as he was there, and he was still active when I left, and that was the very beginning of my mission. We started teaching him. I got to go back to Lusaka right before I left, and we saw him again and stuff, and a total transformation in who he was, a lot happier than he was before, and hopefully he's still active and stuff and doing those things. It's hard to stay in touch with people, from 3,000 miles away. But that's the one thing, is no matter what, even if those people that you're teaching aren't baptized, as you teach them those principles, you'll see the gospel working in their lives, and that builds a testimony. Is that itself is a miracle, and a blessing of the gospel, just to see the way that the gospel truly does bring happiness and blessings to their lives, and it shows in yours too, as you're going. And even though sometimes you might not feel it or recognize it, when you finally get a chance to look back, you'll see it there and working in your life, and changes who you are as well. I was a totally different person coming back than I was when I left, at least in my eyes, maybe not in everybody else's, but at least I feel a difference and see a difference. And I think that's the real miracle as you're out there, is if you do everything you're supposed to, you'll see the change in yourself, and who you become. And I think that's probably the biggest miracle you'll recognize while you're there of the gospel, is that conversion of yourself as well as others. Congratulations on your call. You got a special one. I guess one thing that I found especially, is I fully believe that no matter where we're called, the Lord knows us, and He always calls us to the place which is best for us, and so you'll enjoy it for sure. I know I'm very grateful for my mission call, where I was able to go to Zambia Lusaka Mission, to Malawi there, and serve there for those 2 years. I guess especially before I left, my testimony wasn't super strong, but I know now for sure that the church is extremely true, that it is the only true church on the earth, and that it is led by a prophet today. And I know that as you serve and do your best there, that your testimony will grow. And even if it's already strong, you'll see just how strong it truly can become, and the kind of person that you can become. I believe fully that our missions are there to prepare us for the rest of our lives, and being the people, all that we can be, as we are living on this earth, and even afterwards. And I guess I know you're probably kind of nervous about, or especially your parents are probably very nervous about where you're going, more so than you are, but just know that no matter what you're worried about with the mission, with where you're going and serving in your mission, that as long as you listen to the Spirit, that you'll be protected. The Lord has a plan for everything, and I do know now more than ever that plan, is being carried out. That His plan for you is being carried out, and as you look at it, you'll see His hand in your life as you look back, and as He directs you from one place to another, both in your mission and off of it. You can see how He's been forming you to the person that you need to be, and that can serve Him the best. I know it's been a great blessing in my life having that testimony of the gospel. Even afterwards, my wife joined the church after we started dating and stuff for a while, and we were able to get married and plan on going to get married here in the temple soon, and that's something that we look forward to. And just to see the impact that the gospel has made in my life, I can't even show enough appreciation and gratitude for it all. It truly has changed who I am, and I know that it's true. I know that God does live, and that Jesus Christ is our Savior and Redeemer, and I know that He really did come to this earth, and He knows each and every one of us, and suffered for each and every one of us, and He knows me personally, and I've seen that through my life as He's been directing me, and He teaches me personally for the things that I need at the time, and for the things that I will soon run into and have run into as time has gone on. And again, I'm very grateful for it, and for the guidance I've been given, and for the gospel. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.